Hello and welcome to Dugout Debrief. I'm your host, Chris DeLuca. This is Boom Broadcasting's one, first, and only baseball-centric podcast. And I just made the safe sign because there are a lot of safe runners in Game 6 because the Dodgers have won the World Series. They won in 6 games against the New York Yankees. And with this kind of being the beginning of our news segment here, we're going to go get into that. The Dodgers obviously will be covered more in depth. That is the main discussion of this show. Probably next week, we're actually going to do a full season recap. I plan on just covering the finale, Game 6 of the World Series today, and then next week doing a season recap. But we're also going to go and preview what we will be doing long-term over the offseason now that we have reached the colder months of the year and how I'm going to be covering that. We're going to go make a decision relating to that live on this program. So with that being said, we're going to get into the news. Garrett Cole re-signs on a 4-year deal worth $144 million right after he opted out, which was pretty fascinating to me. Like, he opted out and then immediately re-signed. They found that kind of amusing. He's 34. It's a 4-year deal. That will probably be the end of his prime. I don't think that was a bad move by either team. He had a fantastic World Series, even though they lost both games. He started Game 1 and Game 6. He was not the reason that they lost. He pitched fantastic, especially in Game 1 where he was pulled out way too early by Aaron Boone, who, by the way, is expected to return next year. I guess that's a little tidbit. I didn't really include that as its own thing in this week's news section. But, Aaron Boone returning. The major question is now will they be able to get Juan Soto to kind of complement him? Cole, I think, will be just as fantastic as he was this year, last year, next year. I mean, New York seems to be a pretty good fit for him. And I really do, love that for him personally. I think that he's an interesting character, and he's got a personality. I think it's developed more and more. Obviously, he had more of a personality when he was with Houston, but we've seen it kind of articulate into a new thing now that he's in New York. It's kind of this weird combination of the Yankee way, but also with Garrett Cole's just quirkiness. He's a very quirky guy, but I do think it's a good move by the Yankees. $144 million, honestly, I mean, comparison to what some of these guys are making is not that much. And that's guaranteed, by the way. I don't know the clauses. I don't think those have been released yet. Next piece of news, Alex Kirilloff retired from Major League Baseball, which I thought was really sad. It was something that was kind of overlooked. He retired due to injury. He was the first-round pick out of Plum High School in Pennsylvania. He committed to Liberty University, which is a pretty darn good baseball program, but turned it down. Only to be drafted by the Minnesota Twins 15th overall in 2016. He underwent Tommy John surgery while he was with, I think he was with Elizabethton at the time, back when a rookie ball existed, and he had to undergo Tommy John surgery. And sadly, this is a foreshadowing of his career. He battled injuries his entire, unfortunately, short career. 2021, he had wrist surgery, which ended his year. 2020, most of his 2022, I think, also. 2023, he had a torn labrum that finally earlier this season, he was placed on IR with back soreness. And I think it was a combination of all the injuries. I do think that the back soreness was neurologic. I do believe I read something about that it was kind of a nerve issue. So it was a similar retirement to a guy like Prince Fielder, where it's more the body physically cannot keep up with what you are demanding to be an athlete, even if you are doing all of the recovery right, even if you're listening to the doctors, the trainers, the experts, people that you pay, the team pays a lot of money, your personal trainers that you pay a lot of money, even if you listen to them, it still will not always go your way. But he would end his career with a 248 batting average, 198 hits, and 27 career home runs. And there could have been a lot more in that career, especially with a guy who's drafted 15th overall, relatively not that long ago. 2016 was not that long ago. And a sad day to see him retire. And nobody really talked about it. Like, MLB Network talked about it for like 2 minutes. Again, I know I never watched. We've mentioned that in the program before. I never watched MLB Network, so they might have talked about it more. I just kind of saw it in passing. So there are a lot of re-signings. Free agency opened, I think, Monday, formally, something like that. But there's a lot of guys who were either given club options, extended their player options super early, et cetera, et cetera. Austin Hedges, we love him. We always talk about him. We're big Austin Hedges fans. He is a locker room guy, to say the least. He once hit Carl Willis, who is from North Carolina, by the way, the Guardians pitching coach, in the head with a Red Bull can because he was trying to hit, I think, Stephen Kwan or someone like that. I can't remember, but he was trying to hit him and trying to hit him. His buddies. That's the thing, is every game he goes and he just throws Red Bull cans at people after he slammed about 4 of them. He's a big caffeine head, which I love. Recurring character in the Rose rotation, something I enjoy watching, something I always found fascinating. Just the points that he makes, the player's perspective is interesting. And I think Austin Hedges will make a great coach at some point, similar to Stephen Vogt. And I do think that them re-signing him as a locker room guy and a good defensive catcher, just not a very good offensive player. But that's aside. Kyle Hendricks signs with the Angels, 1 year, $3 million. Not that bad. They just gave up Griffin Canning to Atlanta for Jorge Soler as well. I can't remember that. Yeah, that did happen right after the season. That happened like the day after the season. So we did not cover that in the last episode of Dugout Debrief. But yeah, so they're trying to complement, get another pitcher because they gave up Griffin Canning to Atlanta. Not the worst. Kyle Hendricks has kind of just been there the past few years. He was part of that World Series team with the Cubs in 2016. He was the last member of that World Series team that was left. I think I read something about that. Moving on, Ronaldo Lopez is back in the ATL on a 3-year, $30 million deal. And I think they kind of got a steal there, especially with how good his season was. His back half might have not been very good, but great start to the year. He had an injury toward the All-Star break, which really sucked, but love Ronaldo Lopez. Really happy that he turned his career around. And then another guy who's maybe turning his career around. Maybe it was an overpay. We're not really sure yet. Michael Wacha, a part of some of those random mid-2000s St. Louis Cardinals playoff teams, re-signs with the Royals on a 3-year, $51 million extension. And he's only 33, which I thought he was a lot older, but I guess those mid-2000s Cardinals teams were so forgettable that it feels like it was like 20 years ago. Michael Wacha, only 33, and not the worst move. Kansas City had a solid rotation with Brady Singer and Seth Lugo as well. So, I mean, they can keep that 3-man rotation pretty well. They could go and have another playoff run like they did here in 2024. Moving on, another guy I really like, another friend of the Chris Rose rotation, Miggy Rowe. We love you, Miggy Rowe. Miguel Rojas, $5 million club option, which is basically just, hey, the club wants you back. Here's your $5 million. Come back for a year. Another great locker room guy, big part of this World Series team. Emotionally, maybe not so much play-wise. He only started one game. I think he started game 5 or something like that. Game 4, game 5. But yeah, locker room guy, great leadership. Eugenio Suarez. I always trip up in saying his name because it looks like Eugenio, and it's not. Eugenio, I believe. Picks up his $15, that'll be pretty low, $15 million player option with the Arizona Diamondbacks. So he will stay in the desert. And then finally, Brandon Lau picks up his $10.5 million option to stay in Tampa, which, speaking of that, on a kind of unscripted side note, the insurance claim so far with Tropicana Field is not looking great. It's looking like the team is going to have to pick up a lot more of the stadium repairs than initially expected. And, that's unfortunate. We've already talked about that before, the potential alternate locations where they could be. I think the most realistic would be a place like Orlando. Montreal probably would not work. But yeah, like I said, we discussed that about 2 episodes ago. So if you want to go and hear about that, go, I believe 2 episodes ago. It should be in the description. Tropicana Field added to there. And with that being said, that is about all of the news because there have been a bunch of people that declined their player options. Hassan Kim was declined on his club option, so he will not be returning to San Diego. They're going to need a middle infielder. I wonder who they're going to go for. It wouldn't surprise me if they went with a guy like Willy Adames or something who had a pretty solid year with Milwaukee, who's probably not going to be returning to the Brew Crew. would not surprise me. They need middle infielders, especially because, like we said, Ha-Seong Kim is not returning to San Diego. That being said, we're doing the World Series wrap up. It is now the offseason, but we had an incredible game 6. I covered game 1 through 5, so make sure to check out my World Series episode from last week where it was a little bit pre-recorded. I did my first initial reactions on Quick Hits with Podcast Smitty, and I was also on Out of Pocket the day after that happened on Thursday. So yeah, Game 6 of the World Series was amazing. The Dodgers fell behind very early in the first inning. Jazz Chisholm Jr. and Aaron Judge both hitting home runs to take a 3-0 lead early, so it was not a great precedent set from us. Dodgers went 1-2-3 in the top of the second. Verdugo, we'll be talking about him a little bit later, drove in Volpe in the second. Stanton hit a home run in the third. It was not looking great. Down 5-0 early. I was almost ready. I always watch out every game, by the way. I'm one of those people. So even if I got to work in the morning, unless it's a non-relevant playoff game, I'm going to stay up. But World Series game, I was definitely going to stay up for it. I was being like, well, time to go to bed soon. And happy I did not go to bed early, even though I did not plan to. Outside of a Betts and Verdugo walk, nothing really happened until the 5th. Oh my gosh, the 5th inning, man. I mean, it really felt like that game flew by and then it slowed down once we got to the middle innings. And that's something that I've noticed, especially with the pitch clock. As players have developed and learned the pitch clock and how to handle it, pitchers have learned to slow down the game in other ways, utilizing their timeouts, their throwovers. Now that we're about 4 years into these new rules, these pitchers have actually adapted to them and learned how to use them to their advantage. They've learned how to quick pitch with it because they kind of have to quick pitch. Initially, a lot of the advantage was to the batters, but now it's honestly going more and more to the pitchers with the new rules because they have adapted quicker than the hitters have adapted, if we're being honest with you. But anyway, going back to the 5th inning, Kike Hernandez starts out with a single. Yankees were kind of sitting there, nothing much here. Garrett Cole still looked fantastic. Aaron Judge on the next play did not look fantastic. He made a very, very boneheaded error. And this is something, the pop-up that he dropped was a pop-up that I guarantee you he had made easily 20, 30, 40,000 times in his life between practicing when he was in from T-ball all the way up to being a Major League Baseball player. And he just really, really messed up at the worst possible time. And I hate that for him. I mentioned that in Podcast Smitty's show, mentioned that on Out of Pocket as well. Volpe made an error. That was another thing. I actually got into a little bit of a debate on a social media app about that Volpe error, because his body weight was leaning towards third base. And this man was making an argument saying, well, he should have gone to first. And I'm saying, no, if there's a force at a base that all your momentum is going to, and it's the lead runner, you're going to go there. You're going to go 1 to the lead runner, 2 to the easiest possible play. Volpe 100% made the right call there. It was just he underthrew it. He skipped it. And it could have been a lot worse. I was like, yeah, that's an error. That was the least bad of all the errors. And then back-to-back strikeouts, one of which was Ohtani. I believe the other was Muncy. And then it all came to a climax. Garrett Cole was still in the game, and him and Anthony Rizzo had a massive miscommunication that would lead to the tying of the game. Ground ball right up to first. Mookie Betts is a speedy guy. He's a really fast guy. And Rizzo is not the fastest guy. He fields the ball as he's supposed to, but Garrett Cole does not cover the base. And again, going back to the Aaron Judge point, these are plays that they have practiced tens of thousands of times in their life. And they messed up at the worst possible time. And there's nothing you can do about it. It was ugly. It was total miscommunication. I guarantee you that they both knew exactly what they were going to do, but one person's brain said one thing and the other person's brain said another, and we humans are not telepathic, unfortunately, for us. And then after that, Freddie Freeman, World Series MVP Freddie Freeman. Sorry to spoil that for you guys who are not watching the series. World Series MVP Freddie Freeman slammed the ball into center field, and then Teoscar Hernandez hit a double, and then it's tied. 1 inning, 5 runs, game tied, Sox blown off. I was going from not feeling great to being like, we tied it. We're showing life. And that was my mentality at that point, is we're showing life. Even if we were to lose back-to-back games, game 5 and game 6, at least we were showing life in the game 6. That's what matters, because as I've mentioned before, my biggest fear with the Dodgers in the playoffs is the bat's dead. That is something that has recurred for us, especially in the past 4 years outside of 1 year. Last 5 years outside of 1 year. Bottom of the 6th started with a walk. Judge would walk as well to advance Soto, and Stanton would continue his hot streak, which that man, I think, would have been is a runner-up for the World Series MVP and playoff MVP. Hit a sac fly, score Soto, Yankees take the lead pretty much right back. And it was at this point of the game where I was like, have the Yankees ever not had traffic in this game? Like, I felt like every minute, it's like first, second pitch of the inning, boom, or a walk. It was very frustrating. Didn't end up mattering in the end, but very tense at the time. I constantly felt like the Yankees had traffic, and it was very concerning. But here's the thing. What won the Dodgers the World Series was not the long ball. It was not the live or die by it. That is what lost the Yankees the World Series. The Yankees prioritized home runs and flashiness. And that helps you get there, but that will not always push you over the edge. That's the most important thing to remember, ladies and gentlemen. You need a combination of all of it. Every good World Series team, solid World Series team, has had that combination. Look at these Houston teams. Look at this Houston dynasty, whatever you want to call it. Look at Atlanta in 2021. Fantastic, because they had a mix of everything. They had small ball, where they had the stolen bases and the sac flies. They had home run hitters. They had an electric offense and a great pitching rotation. And the Dodgers did this, except with only a 3-man rotation. And 2 sac flies on infield hit and a walk. Betts drove in the winning run and a sac fly. 9th inning was tense. I was concerned. I really was. When the bottom of the 9th came in, I said, there is no way that they're not going to make this close. There is no way that there will not be base traffic. And I was wrong. And again, as I've said a few times here in the past few weeks, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy I was wrong. Like I said, I was concerned seeing Walker Buehler come in, because I have a little bit of PTSD from for our starters, ace starters especially, coming in the 9th inning to close out games, close out playoff games. We remember that from a certain 2019 playoff series against a incredible team that nobody seems to talk about in retrospect, which is another thing that kind of frustrates me. 3 up, 3 down, man. It was insane. I was not expecting it. Walker Buehler was dominant. And I think I mentioned how we will mention Alex Verdugo again. And it was Alex Verdugo who kind of struck out in a Manny Machado style pitch when he ended the World Series for us. In the dirt, not a lot of effort, low effort at bat to end the season for them. You saw Juan Soto sitting there with his helmet, staring at the field, pulling a Stephon Diggs, which we completely respect that, because they wanted to win. And another argument that I've had with a couple people is the Yankees wanted to win. The Yankees wanted to win just as much as the Dodgers did. The issue is the Dodgers played better in fundamental baseball, in the aforementioned. Small ball, good pitching, good reliever outings, good bunting, sac flies, good decisions on the base path, good defense. That's what won the Dodgers the World Series, and that's what lost the Yankees the World Series. And yeah, we did it. We did it. I could not believe it. I stayed up till about 3:00 in the morning watching the post-game coverage. I watched the celebrations. I bought a bottle of champagne. I was so excited. It was a really happy moment for myself. It was really fun to celebrate that with my friends. It was really fun to talk about that with the Boom Broadcasting team, who I'm so appreciative to be able to talk sports with these guys, not just baseball. But with that being said, the Dodgers are World Series champions. We did it. And I want to once again congratulate the Yankees. I want to congratulate Jason mouthing off with Mike's team. Great guys. I feel bad that we had to end their season the way that they did, but I want to tell you guys that your season was not a failure. It is the beginning for two great franchises, and we will meet again in the World Series very soon. I'm pretty confident in that. That being said, it's time for our trivia question because I never waste you guys' time. So, last week, name the three players who have won the World Series MVP multiple times. And I did mess up here. I gave you a wrong hint. And I apologize about this. So we're going to give half credit for this because I did say all 1900s. I was wrong. I read the baseball reference wrong. That was totally on yours truly, on this host. The answers are 1, 2, 3. Sandy Koufax in 1963 and 1965. We have both of these World Series titles right behind me for the Dodgers. Sandy Koufax, one of the best Dodger pitchers ever. Bob Gibson, one of the most intimidating pitchers ever in 64 and 67. Reggie Jackson in 73 and 77. And finally, the one that I accidentally misled you guys on, Corey Seager in 2020, which we have right below here. It's kind of hard to tell. By the way, we need a new banner, which is a happy expense. And then 2023 with the Texas Rangers with Michaels, Texas Rangers, the Prez, Texas Rangers. So with that being said, next week's trivia question is a little bit easier because it has a football tie to it. What is the name of the stadium that the Pirates and Steelers famously shared for many years? And it was a dual use and pretty classic one. Was replaced by Heinz Field and PNC Park. Not going to give the years, but that is your hint. That being said, we're about to do our little outro here. We're about 22 minutes, but I want to note a couple of things here. Next week, we're going to be doing our season recap. We're just going to be saying how crazy this season was. We're going to go talk about it. I want to dedicate a whole episode to the Dodgers World Series win because, again, we're not a Dodger-centric podcast, but I'm celebrating, and I would do the exact same thing for all 29 other teams. But I wanted to cover the World Series team individually. I wanted to cover Game 6 individually. I thought it was worth it. And we also had a decent amount of news. And that's the bright side is we're going to have a lot of news. That's probably going to encompass about 50% of the show moving forward as we go in the offseason. Speaking of the offseason, what is the offseason plan? We are going to be breaking down all 30 teams. We're going to be doing a 30 clubs in 30 days kind of thing here like MLB Network does, except a little bit more spread out. So the way that this is going to work is I'm going to start with a league. I'm going to flip a coin. This is just what I happen to have. I have a penny in front of me, and I'm going to flip that. And that will be the league that we start with. And then I will flip it again to determine what geographic side we start on. Is it east or west? And we'll just move to the opposite geographic side. So if we start in the west, then we go to the central, and then east, etc. So which league are we going to start with? American or national? So heads, kind of hard to see, heads, and then tails right there. Heads will be the American, tails will be the national. Let's hope I don't drop this. It is heads. We're going to be starting with the American League. So American League will be the one we're starting with. Now, which geographic side will we be starting with, west or east? Heads will be east and tails will be west. And it is going to be the American League East is what we'll be starting with. So Jason, get ready because your Yankees are about to be covered. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm once again so happy to be talking about baseball, something I care so much for. Make sure to tune into Quick Hits. Make sure to tune into Out of Pocket. Make sure to tune into the Gridiron Address. I'm a recurring character on there. I've not been on there for a while because the Steelers were on bye, but we got the Commanders this week, and I'll be excited to maybe come on this week and recap that game. But overall, ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy. I know that it's sad when your team doesn't win the World Series, but for the one team that it does, you're over the moon. Thank you guys for tuning in and have a wonderful, wonderful week.